In a vast wasteland of entertainment where radio has become obsolete, stands an embittered man teetering at the edge of sanity. With help from radio friends, he's about to embark on a global mission that would change the course of history as we know it. Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell K.C. Hill. And up to the Great White North in Vancouver is Alexander Knight. We're just jamming along here on the show today, and it's very good to have you here on a regular Sunday after Black Friday. My name is Mitchell K.C. Hill, and am I sure?
Mitch Hill!
Yeah, just wanted to make sure. That's the only time you're going to get to hear that. And this is our program. This is number 40, and it's also the 1st of December. So all kinds of new and interesting things are going on in the program today. I'm the guy that does the old stuff. The guy that does the new stuff is my producer and good friend, Mr. Alexander Knight. Hello, Alexander.
You almost had a Jerry Lewis moment.
I got
that
pretty
to be here,
lady.
Mitch, for The Last Angry DJ. This is the show where we interview luminaries in the broadcast world, but this is a show where it is the intersection of old media versus new media. So we don't just talk about terrestrial radio. And our guest today is somebody I would definitely consider on the new media side, who's been doing this a lot longer than we have, who's been plugging it away at YouTube and as a wealth of knowledge. And I definitely will have my own set of questions to ask him here, but I'm super excited. I think that's fair to say that he's been doing it a very long time.
That's a good tease. And we invite folks to ask their questions via Mukana and also via YouTube because we're live right now. So we'll answer those questions. And I am very pleased to bring on somebody I know. He's the GOAT of office hours and podcasting in general. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jeffrey Powers. Put your hands together for him.
Should I sound like a goat? Maybe a Wilhelm screen or something?
Oh, the Wilhelm? Could be. I'm getting better at doing that, so I can do them on. And maybe you're here for a reason. Could be.
Money.
Anyhow,
Yeah, always money.
Jeffrey, so good to have you here. You've been around a long time, and I think you cover a lot of the areas that we touch on. And as Alexander just said, we tangentially, is that the word you used, Alexander? Discuss that because the world of radio and media and streaming and podcasting is a pretty wide subject. So if we were to cast our net over the world of podcasting, vodcasting, is there a difference, Jeffrey, between a podcast and a vodcast? Is that a thing now that we need to disclaim? If you're doing video at the same time?
Was ever a thing. Podcast, it doesn't make any sense to say vodcast because I'm assuming they're meaning video podcast. But yeah, I've never heard it as vodcast.
So you can't differentiate between a video podcast and an audio-only podcast, which this one becomes later. We're video for today, and then we're audio for the rest of forever. I don't know how long they keep these things. So I just want to make sure you get the name down right, because I've had people say you can't do your show with video and call it a podcast. And I'm like, wow, I mean, really? Is there a special internet police that come out and attack you for doing something
it's every
wrong?
audio podcaster that has a stake in audio podcasting for a name that doesn't exist and is used as a generic term like Google versus search or Kleenex versus tissue.
Got it. And Alex, you identify an actual podcast by something that has an RSS feed. And who started all that? Was that Apple that started that? That did
Adam
podcasting?
Curry.
No,
Alex?
it was. I think it was Dave Weiner who originally created the
Dave
standard.
Weiner. Dave Weiner, who actually went to school here in Madison, Wisconsin, and he created a container that wasn't really meant for audio video. It was meant mostly for publications like e-publications and PDF files to be added into an RSS feed. But it also included music and video to it, and it was all encompassing. And I think it went through a revision or two before it actually came to what the RSS is known to today. And then, then one day that Adam Curry just said, hey, what would happen if we put a regular show on there? And then the rest is history.
So who has the longest running podcast? Is it Adam Curry? Anyone?
Gee, I don't know.
Anyone?
That's a tough one. I don't know.
Because there have been some claims that the word podcasting was coined way before 2000, and there was a show in 1996 that had a podcast. Had to do the air quotes, and it was and I don't know if they're still doing the show, but that could have been the longest running. But at one time I had a podcast. I still do. It's called Day in Tech History, where it was a daily rundown of tech history. It's just doing repeats now. But the whole point is that I did one every single day. I was the first podcaster to ever hit 2,000 consecutive show. So in 2000,
Yeah.
I started in 2009 daily, and I did it for 2,000 shows. And that was a big pain in the, and
You can say it. It's allowed. We're an open show
Okay.
here. We can talk
It was
about
a
it.
big pain in the tuchus.
I like that. It really ruffles my tuchus when they do that.
Yeah.
And it's had an immediate response. There was it seems like social media became galvanized by the idea that anybody could have a show. But the look and the sound of a podcast, to me, as an ancient guy that sort of adopted it in an early age, was there's always a big microphone in the shot, and when they show themselves, and for the audio, it was always like this close-up, really bad audio. They didn't get more sophisticated in their presentation. It seemed like they were doing it, and they were just doing this is good enough, and things got more sophisticated as time went on. Like, if you watch Joe Rogan or Mr. Beast, they're a little bit more sophisticated. If you watch Geekazine, you have a quite a studio there. Why don't you explain what you use, Jeffrey, to manifest a podcast on the internet?
Magic, string, and coconuts.
Oh, wow! I love that. Gotta watch out. Oh, be careful.
The funny thing is, it's so grown since my first podcast wasn't a tech related podcast. My first podcast was music related. At the time, they had a website called GarageBand, not GarageBand as we know it on Apple, but actual GarageBand.com, where indie bands and musicians could post their music and then be heard. And so I did an indie podcast on the music, and I used a lot of the GarageBand music, and I did that for about a year and a half. But then it started to get really difficult because copyright started to come into play, especially on those things. If I was to write and record a song that's not on any label, and you think, oh, I can play that in my bar or anything like that, the big three will come at you and still ask for money, because maybe someday my song will be part of their catalog, and then I'll get my money from that. So it was the same thing. We were starting to learn that back in podcast days. So I decided I'm just not going to deal with that crap. So I started a new podcast, and I made it more tech oriented because that's what I was doing. And then it didn't even start out as Geekazine. It's actually, that was 17 years ago.
17
a month ago.
That long? Wow.
Yeah. So
in the world of tech, that is a couple of lifetimes.
Yeah. So Geekazine, it is actually a lot of lifetimes, definitely. So Geekazine came because I had an idea for another. It was like the Tech Runner or something like that. But somebody had that, and I was going through it, and I was just sitting there, and I was looking at that time they had e-zines. You could get yourself a whole bunch of e-zines, and it just bothered the hell out of me. It's like, why e-zine? That makes it's supposed to be a zine, like mag-a-zine, and it's like, well, maybe Geek-a-zine. Okay. So then I registered the name, and they said it was available, and I was like, okay, there we go. And Geekazine.com was born in 2007.
Wow. And how would you rate the, if it's been going that long, is there like the curves, has it been ups and downs, or it's been a steady climb in terms
of ups and
of
downs.
Yeah. See, everybody gets
up and
into
down.
this thinking that they're going to get rich real fast and they'll instantly get thousands. We've been at this almost a year, and we have about 140 YouTube subscribers. I can't tell how many we have on the other podcasting services like Apple.
Wait a minute. No, I'm not going to get paid for this.
Hold on a second. I'll transfer it. There you go.
Okay.
Do you even know what that sound is? I mean, it's like I play it. It's like a lot of people say, "Well, what was that?" It's a cash register. They don't sound like that.
It's not just a cash register. It is a pull handle cash register.
Yeah, the kind where you tap 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 tap, pull the thing down, and off it goes. But
Just
anyhow,
like in Vegas.
how do you how do you get to the point where you realize that this is a long-term type thing, and you might get a few perks along the way, but it's not necessarily a great career choice? Would you say that?
I disagree. If you do it right, it's a great. I have not had a regular 9 to 5 job in 17 years that I've done this. This last year being probably the worst of everything, but for the most part, it's like, if you do it right, and it doesn't have to be if I do the podcast right, but what does the podcast also bring? Like, for instance, when we started doing podcasting, audio podcasting, and the old ones really know what I'm talking about here.
You mean like this?
Is Citrix had GoToMeeting and all these, and one day they went all in on podcasting, and they got funding, and they were throwing money left and right. And we were doing shows. We would do a weekly roundtable. I would do my shows, and it was always sponsored by GoToMeeting, because they wanted to get that GoToMeeting people onto GoToMeeting, and they were paying just crazy amounts for that, and it was great. Even Twit was profiting on GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar and the other services.
You're talking about Leo Laporte's show?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then one day Citrix just came in and said, okay, our VC run is over. We now need to show that this is going to actually make money. And then they did the full assessment, and then everything went from here to. And
Alex and I have talked about that a few times, about the metrics that determine. Alex, what are your theories on tracking the metrics? And some people are sort of waking up in the advertising industry and saying, yeah, no. It's kind of getting complicated.
Yeah,
these
it
days.
is. Well, it's not kind of getting complicated. It's being complicated for a while. I mean, if you are a fan of any of the Twit TV podcasts, and Leo Laporte's been doing that for longer than most people, right? Back in the early days and he liked to call it netcast before even podcast was an actual name that we all used to call these shows. But it's been a challenge for a while, because there's more podcasts than ever, and trying to find podcasts is really, really difficult, with approximately 500,000 podcasts in the Apple Podcast directory. And of course, one of the challenges with podcasts is the fundamental technology, the way it was designed with RSS feeds, is we really don't know that much about our listeners, our audience. We don't know the demographics. We don't know the psychographics. We have an IP address. I know roughly in a country where somebody's coming from. We don't really know anything about that. And that doesn't really work for a lot of big advertisers. Like, I'll just as an example, let's say you want Coca-Cola to be a sponsor in your podcast. Well, they want some kind of return on investment, and they want to know a little bit more about your audience. And we just don't know. It's not designed for this. So people are trying to tack on technology like dynamic ad insertion and all this try to make it a little bit smarter. But the reality is that we don't really have this much data to provide. And so we're seeing a lot more conservative responses to advertising on podcasts. Big advertisers are pulling out, and they're not they're not spending as much money, and that's a challenge. I mean, just look what happened with Twit. I mean, they had to shut down their studios, they had to lay off staff. Leo's doing it out of the attic in his house, which I actually argue I think he should have done that a long time ago. But there was a lot of overhead with their production, and he was more successful than a lot of people, right? So if somebody like that, who's so well entrenched in the industry, has challenges, I mean, we're all feeling it, right? And I'm sure Jeffrey probably has some things to say about that as well.
Yeah, well, a lot of things have changed. Like I said with the Citrix thing, that was a big deal. And like I said, when everything just went to code red, that changed the thought as how we had advertised. Because a lot of the podcasters only had Citrix as their main sponsor, And so they had to start scrambling. If you watched Twit at that point, they were always trying to find new avenues. We were going to things like CES, Consumer Electronics Show. We actually did a live thing. I was with a group called the Tech Podcast Network. That's Todd Cochran and Blueberry Raw Voice. Anyway, the whole point is that we went to CES and we did a live show. And we started out doing the booth to booth to booth, but then good friends at NBC Universal let us use their booth when they did their productions, and then we actually used their desk and that for off time, and we did a live show. And then Todd turned to me and said, we're going to do this next year on our own. So we got our own booth, we got the internet, we got the power, all the other stuff that we needed, and we did a show from the booth, and people came to us, and it was great. And had a lot of fun with it. And of course, we had Citrix as a sponsor, which in the first year was great. But then all of a sudden, like I said, everything just kind of nosedived from there. Then we had to really scramble and find other companies to work with. And one year I had Luxor. I did a deal with Luxor, so we were able to have them as a sponsor, which is kind of unconventional at the time. But it was a lot of fun. We got to stay there, and we got to meet a lot of people from Luxor at that time. And you just had to really think of new ways to do it. Nowadays, it's a lot of brand deals, and it was a lot of Amazon. And now Amazon's starting to do the nosedive. A lot of people don't realize that, but as an Amazon influencer, I've been seeing a lot of that happening. Like, for instance, Black Friday, where it could actually pay for a whole quarter of my lifestyle, doesn't pay for 1 month of my lifestyle now. So you realize that you have to, okay, here's the brakes, better hit them, better get ready to hit them, and don't put all your eggs in the one basket, because it's going to definitely, the bottom's going to fall out, and all your eggs are going to be broken.
Jeffrey, are you suggesting that at once podcasting is a new, bright, shiny object on social media, and advertisers sort of jumped on because they thought this was where everything was going, and then they did, and then they started, at some point, they started to say, whoa, wait a minute, how do we justify this? Because the typical advertising methodology would be determine what's your CPM, or cost per thousand, when you're doing this, and you can't immediately, as Alex indicated, immediately determine or grok the number of people and where they come from and what's their lifestyle, all the traditional media stuffs that are the metrics for media. I think, and Jeffrey, you're an expert on YouTube, you can track those metrics pretty tightly on YouTube, because we can see the timeline, and we can tell when Mitch is playing sound effects and when he's not, or he's talking about something that irritates everybody. You can literally see the audience numbers going up and down.
Yep.
How is that?
For YouTube, it's really simple. They enclosed it all in. Whereas with podcasts, you've got an open-ended RSS. Anybody can create an RSS. It's not an Apple thing. Everybody associates it with Apple, but it's not an Apple thing. In fact, Apple didn't get on the podcast bandwagon until like 2006, 2006, yeah. And so it's all open-ended. So you could create your own RSS, and then nobody's figuring out your metrics until you attach it to something. YouTube is technically a walled garden, even though you can embed video or audio outside of YouTube. So I could put it onto my website, but it's still going back to YouTube. So it's still collecting the metrics that it wants to collect, whether you're within the player or you're outside of the player.
So what is it considered you're starting to make it on YouTube, for example, by the number of, by the way, on the subject of subscribers, make sure you smash the button here. But we're up to right now 139 subscribers. Is that okay? Or is that like you guys are babes in the woods? You got to really work on that.
The one thing that I've always said is you could have 1 million subscribers. And we'll put it to this one. You remember, was it a year or two ago, the Instagram influencer? She was trying to sell a T-shirt, and she didn't get a single one sold, but yet she had all these millions of followers that were behind her. And then that was a point where a lot of people realized, okay, influence doesn't always mean influence. It's more, it can be also be a fake it till you make it type thing. Same thing goes here. I could have 1 million people on my page. And I've, Geekazine's been around. Well, actually, Geekazine YouTube's been around since 2011 because we were on these other platforms that actually did pay. YouTube wasn't paying at that time. So I was on a thing called blip.tv where I could actually make money off of it. And then I went through the MCN route before I went on to YouTube. So I've actually been getting a whole bunch of followers. And out of all the followers that I have, I don't know what percentage is still there. They could have changed jobs. They could have passed away. They could have, whatever. And so that could be dead accounts just sitting there. So I have so many thousands of followers, but are they active followers? So you could have 1 million people and you could buy 1 million people. You could have them come and subscribe at one time because you're giving away a PS5 or something like that. And then come the time that you actually have to prove that that is happening, that you've got that 1 million people, you find out that you don't have it. Yet you could have a channel that has 1 subscriber to it. And then you put up something, let's say $1 million gem or something like that. If they buy that $1 million gem, you've just influenced 1 person. And that's the whole point, is you could have 1 million people that don't listen to you, or you could have 1 person that does listen to you. Which one is the more valuable part there?
And now I can see why advertisers are scratching their heads and saying, do we really need to spend, $500,000 on that show? They're starting to pick and choose the ones that they want to get behind. And it's a popularity contest in my book. It's like the way radio used to be. You used to be popular or you weren't. And, there's only room for so many people at the top. Is it kind of like that now? It's like right now there's a thinning of the herd, so to speak, of podcasters and I was going to say the word vodcaster, but anybody that's on YouTube, let's say.
Call it vodcaster if you want. Alex was talking about how Twit called it netcast. They called it netcast because they didn't want to call it podcasting. They wanted to start their own thing. So that's all fine. As for the other end, yes, a lot of business, a lot of PR is coming. Spotify. Spotify was the second coming of advertising to podcasting. And everybody was super exciting that like Citrix deals would come back into Spotify. And then look what happened there. Fell flat on their face.
And I keep hearing Instagram is the one where the kids are now. I say the kids. I mean, anybody younger than me, those are the kids. You guys are all the kids. But
no, it's Insta Dads now is what it's called.
Insta Dads. Should I get my, what is it, MySpace account back out, dust it off and say, maybe it'll work for me again. So social media is a very interesting component to all this, and the psychology behind what is popular and what is not for a radio station that is fighting for market share, because there's so many things vying for your attention out there in the world. I think some of the morning shows at some of the radio stations are doing YouTube broadcasts. So in other words, they're just adding a visual component to what it is that they're doing live on the radio. And I think that's a good idea, and it's a start in the right direction for a radio station to reach out, because there are not many ways that a radio station can be in touch with their constituency without utilizing media and stuff like that. Alex, you have some thoughts on that? We've talked about it before.
Sorry, no, you caught me off guard. I was doing something.
Oh, sorry about that, buddy. The question was, do radio stations exactly?
See, this is where this is the problem, because I have to coast the show, and I've got so much stuff happening on the back end. I apologize.
I'm trying to bring you into it, pal. But yeah. To your defense, Alex is TDing the show, technical directing. He's moving all the buttons and pushing things and making sure we're on the air and we're working well. And it's a Herculean task to divide your brain into all those various areas. So I thank you for that. But if anybody could do it, it's you, Alex. So congratulations. So the question is, are radio stations going in the right direction to try to embrace social media, including podcasting and a YouTube show, in order to extend their reach? But is it too much too late, or too little too late, or how is it?
No, I don't think it's too little too late.
Okay. All right, that's a fair. Jeffrey, do you have a opinion on that?
I think there's a lot of need for something more local than anything. Like for instance, we have a few radio stations here in Madison, and one I listen to whenever I have to listen to radio. And so, but and I don't do the 9 to 5 morning commute, afternoon commute. And if that was the case, I probably would be listening to them a little bit more because that's what I used to do. But the whole point is that, they offer something that a podcast or a YouTube has a harder time offering, and that is something a little bit more to home, a little bit more local, because they can, that at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can turn on the radio and then find out if the traffic is going to be backed up for miles, or if we're going to have the storms coming. Whereas YouTube, whether there's like Ryan Hall Y'all. Yeah, that's the name. He's a YouTuber that actually shows people what the weather patterns are, but he doesn't get very local to the city. So he can't tell, he could tell you it's going to snow. He can tell you it's going to rain, but he's not focused on that area. Whereas local TV, local radio will let you know, hey, we've got an accident on the I-9. We've got a big storm coming in about 20 minutes here, so you better batten down the hatches. And then, by the way, go over to Amy Joe's and buy yourself some candles because they got a 20% off sale.
I got to get some of those candles for sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump in and check and see what's going on out there on YouTube and Mukana for
Sure.
questions. Alex, you have any questions?
Yeah, there's one for me directly for Jeffrey here, and I'm curious what your thoughts on this because I've seen a concerted effort from a lot of content creators. I mean, we talked about Twit earlier, and they're just one example, but there's a concerted effort from a lot of content creators to not just rely on sponsorships, but also push membership drives, community-driven donations, that kind of stuff. In addition to, as a supplemental source of income, in addition to the sponsorship, because we've seen those numbers go down as well. But what do you think about memberships, about donations, about that kind of thing? Is that is that something that even a new-ish podcast should even attempt to do, or should they just wait till they reach a certain threshold before they even bother asking for money?
Yes. I think that it's tough to say because coming from coming from the beginning side of podcasting, we had all these fancy little things, and because you couldn't go, there wasn't an ad going on Amazon to buy your podcast gear. Podcast gear was like for me, as a musician, I had all the gear that was needed to put together a podcast, so that's what I did, but I wouldn't use that gear nowadays. So same thing happens here, is that you have a lot of options because we've already thought of a lot of things. Like for instance, before the communities and memberships and stuff like that, we had on our web pages, we had buy myself a cup of coffee, and little things like that. We created our own forums because I did come from the forum days before MySpace. You had the forums. And you technically still have forums out there, but they were the ways that you had your community. And I had a few forums out there, and then MySpace came along, just completely knocked those out. But bringing people together to coalesce is always a great thing. But if there's nobody there that knows that you're there to do the coalescing, then it just becomes an empty room. And I think a lot of people, if they start building everything all of a sudden too soon without a good
Right.
business plan put together, they would not be able to, they'd basically be sitting in an empty room like I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, and Ernesto in the YouTube chat makes an important comment too about value for value. And I don't know if any of you are a fan of entrepreneur Gary Vaynerchuk, but he always says something that resonates with me, which is too many people focus on what can I get out of people as opposed to giving value back. Like the ratio needs to be flipped in the direction of I need to push back. I need to push as much value as possible and not try to sell people and stuff as much. And I think there's something to that because I think naturally people will gradually want to, or in the end, they will want to support you if they like your content and they are getting a lot of value. Hopefully, with the small audience that we have, hopefully the people listening and watching to this show are getting some value out of it, or at least from an entertainment perspective, or something else. Maybe they happen to learn something, or they like the guests that we have on. So I think you're right. I think Ernesto, I think value is super important there.
I'm going to add something to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please. Because you brought up Gary, and Gary, great guy. He's doing a kick-ass job out there, and I love it. But Gary did come from money. He did have a family that had a wine company that was the whole idea of getting into social media for him, was so he could help them sell wine. So he had a lot of business acumen that was ready to work with him. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it might be a resource that a lot of other people don't have. Celebrities and people like that, they usually, if they put out a podcast, they've got people that are already working behind them. I put out my show, and it's just me. And the heater just kicked in, so hopefully you're not hearing that. But the whole point is that
sounds like a science fiction thing.
Yeah. Let me turn down this dial first. Oh, I can't do that. Anyway, so the whole point is it's going to kick in. I can't control that. Anyway, the whole point is that if you have a good head and you have people behind you, you can build something. You have other shows. Another show I'm thinking of is one that's very popular nowadays. It's called Screen Crush. And Ryan Airy started this show where basically he was going to talk about Marvel and DC universes and the comic books and kind of outline the show, and he's built it to a point where it's a very successful thing. They're doing a lot of stuff. They're selling T-shirts. They've got an online community. They got a Discord community, and all that other stuff, and they're really kicking it without having to be the only people in the room. And so, yes, you can do it. Sometimes it's got to be strategic. Sometimes you get some viral thing, and then all of a sudden you become something from it. And it's a crapshoot sometimes, and some people will love it, and some people will love it, and then they disappear. Some people will all of a sudden say, "Hey, I didn't know that this existed," and then you get that ebb and flow going thing.
And that's interesting because sorry, Alex, I just wanted to say that when I originally thought about doing a podcast, and like a lot of retired disc jockeys. Wondering what they're going to do with their the life now that they're not on the radio anymore. I thought about, well, I could do a podcast. But at the same time, through my involvement with office hours, I realized that if I'm going to do a podcast, it has to be about something that contributes maybe a little bit of entertainment, but at the same time, information that people can use. And I thought that the idea that I'm a old, washed up, well, maybe not washed up, but old boomer disc jockey from the 70s, would be an interesting point of view to start with. But at the same time, Alex raised his hand real quick when I asked, I need some help with this. He said, well, I would love to do that. And I realized that we had a great combination because we've got a younger guy that knows the technology and the current world status of social media, and then you got an older guy wishing for the golden age of radio back in the day. And between us, we seem to be able to come up with a really interesting juxtaposition of commentary. But at the same time, we have some areas that we hit on that we both totally 100% agree on it. So I think that we've sort of been scavenging the concept of broadcast as a medium, and at the same time, the idea that there's a name called the Last Angry DJ. That's just a moniker that we put on it. We're not necessarily angry, but we do have some beefs about the way things are done. But we have to sort of peel away the onion skin in order to understand what this is. And that's why people like yourself, Jeffrey, are on the show, so that we can peel that onion to the point where we can understand what's going on. And I think we're going through a very important phase of the industry, which we're talking about, is that now the people that hold the purse strings are saying, how do we best monetize? Because, companies, all they do is have people in rooms that decide, well, here's how we can save money. We'll fire all these guys, and we'll hire these guys, or we'll have AI now run the radio station. I think it's important to have these conversations because maybe we'll discover another twit, another gem of an idea that can gather. We're not gaining audience, people, smashing that subscribe button super fast, But I think that we have enough people that are following us that they're realizing that we're sincere. We like to keep it real. And we have interesting people from maybe tangential. Is that the word, Alex? I always get it wrong. Tangential people in the industry that shed a different light on. Like a few weeks ago, we had Penn Ketchum on, who owns a bunch of IMAX theaters in this region. And we learned a lot of interesting connections between what it is that you do as a social media broadcast and how do you substantiate theater goers today in a world where COVID sort of threw everybody a bit of a curveball. So, do you think, Jeffrey, that COVID is a complete and total sea change of everything social media and what we do as podcasters?
Absolutely. COVID brought Clubhouse. And have you been on Clubhouse recently?
Not
know.
recently, no.
People still get on Clubhouse. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the most talked about social network there. I was just on last week. I was just on X, and Robert Scoble was talking about AI. He was using their Clubhouse knockoff platform to do that, and I think that had more interaction than what Clubhouse would have had. For sure. So, and, a lot of things, they talk about how TikTok's claim to fame was simply because of COVID, because nobody else, they didn't have things to do. So why not do some stupid viral thing? And then when you go back to work, you just laugh about that. You did some weird dance and you ate some Tide Pods or whatever the challenge was at the time, and go from there. And it's always gonna change. There was one. Last year there was one where it was like it was what was the name of that one? It got kind of popular and then disappeared, where you didn't type into it, you actually spoke into the phone, and you get your thoughts, and then somebody else would reply with an audio version. And then there was that other social network where at some point in time in the day where you had to stop and do everything and just take a picture of what you were doing, and it would take a picture of the front and rear camera and then post that up. And I think some people are still doing that, but the social networks, they're going to forever change because we're going to do different things differently. As for a podcast, I don't know if there probably are, but I don't think that anything, vertical podcasting is a real thing. And I don't think people are striving for a vertical podcast. They, especially when it comes to shorts and reels, they want the shorts and reels, but nobody's making a podcast out of shorts and reels that I know of. And maybe somebody is, and if they are, let me know. But the whole point is, we never know where the next trend is going to go, and then somebody could come up with the next social network that'll just blow Facebook and Threads and Blue Sky and Mastodon and Twitter and X and all these others out of the water.
It's evolution. You guys will laugh at this story. This is well before the internet, even before CompUSA. I used to have this phone number that you could call on your regular phone that used to hang on the wall. Remember those? And you dial this number, and it would be a busy tone, but it'd be go beep. Then there'd be a pause, beep, and anybody else anywhere in the U.S. that dialed that number could talk in between the beeps. So it was like the first idea of social media to me. You could talk in between the beeps, and the idea was whatever you had to say it quickly because you had to get it between the beeps, and everybody else was a party line on at the same time. So it just was. I was fascinated by how people responded to the idea that they had to reach out on this party line in between the beeps, and it kind of forced them to keep it short, like a lot of social media does today. So it was a very unusual thing. I don't think you guys know what I'm talking about, but some of our older
absolutely
listeners
do. Yeah.
Oh, you
Dial-a-joke.
remember that when the phones did
Well,
that?
you had Dial-a-joke, and Steve Wozniak was the one that created the Dial-a-joke phone number.
Cool.
But you also had the Call Santa numbers, where you'd have, it would be an answering machine that said, ho, 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 I'm, let me know what you want. And then, of course, beep, and then little Timmy would say, I want a Red Ryder BB gun, and then move from there. So yeah, I remember a few of them in my time, in my day, that were just little whatever calls, and sometimes they came with busy signals, and that really sucked.
Yeah, this thing was you could hear everybody all at the same time. It wasn't a recording. It literally was at the same time. And then for me, social media began to, I guess it was CompUSA. It was the first time I started getting on forums. And I think it was owned by GE, and then Sears bought them or something. It was Sears and GE. And then that sort of morphed into a bunch of other animals. AOL came along. AOL was the big animal because I guess they had the most modems in the world. And remember the sound that modems used to, I'm not going to play it, but modems used to make that sound. That's very familiar. It's interesting because, 8-tracks and modem sounds and things like that are things of our youth and utes. Did you say utes? That we used to mess around with. Let's have a little fun here just for a second. Black Friday just passed a couple of days ago, and I guess Cyber Monday is coming tomorrow. What did you guys take advantage of? Anybody buy anything new that either is asking questions on YouTube or Mukana or right here on our panel? Alex, why don't we go with you first? You buy anything new?
The thing is, I've been working on my studio the last couple of weeks. I had to take some time off to rewire everything because I needed a new network switch. So I installed that, and I figured, well, I'm going to build a new AV rack. So I I decommissioned 2 of my older Mac Pro cheese graters, and I put all my computers in a shelf inside the rack, and had to rip out all the old wiring. And there was a lot of cleaning. So it was a multi-day process, as you know. Mitch. So I had to order a lot of new short USB cables and short network cables because I wanted to replace all the long ones. So, but I had done that. I started the ordering process before Black Friday because I tend to buy things when I need them. I'm not constantly trying to chase deals. I mean, look, I'm like anyone. I want to pay the least amount of money as possible. But sometimes when you need stuff, right? And then the biggest purchase I would say probably is the new Yamaha DM3D console that I just got,
nice.
which I haven't actually even taken out of the box yet. So for me, I got a good deal on it, because I'm a Yamaha dealer. But that's it.
Now you let the cat out of the bag. Jeffrey, anything new that you bought that took advantage of the Black Friday and Cyber Monday coming around?
You're a Yamaha dealer? That's cool.
Yeah, I filed that away.
No, well, he's out of my area, and of course I have full compass, which is just 15 minutes down the road, so I can get a lot of different things. But
Harley Davidson.
Yeah. What?
No, I just said Harley Davidson's right around the corner too, right?
Oh no, not anymore. Not anymore.
Oh. Wow.
You know, Harley Davidson's not owned. Is it a Chinese company that owns Harley Davidson now?
I think that's correct.
Yeah. So yeah, Harley Davidson's not even a.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, the judges have
Jim Carrey
judged.
again.
Yeah, absolutely. Any Jeffrey, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You were going to say what you bought.
Bottom line is no, I didn't buy anything from Black Friday. Usually Black Friday is a prepare to be the person to sell you the items for Black Friday. But this year I kept things a lot of low key and of course the Black Friday weekend is not over yet. But I look at all the deals and things like that, and a lot of stuff I already have. The only thing that I bought over this last couple weeks was a brand new couch because I moved just recently and I didn't have a couch. And that's kind of a big thing for being in anywhere, at a house or an apartment or anything like that. Is if you don't have a couch, you just feel like, it's not right. So I ended up buying a couch on Amazon. The one thing I wanted about this couch was it had to be like one of the, detachable, can take it apart in so many pieces. So if you move it, it's not like this big bulky piece that you're running around. So that's the only really big purchase I made, besides more of my merch. So
Do you have some merch that you can slog away right now?
I have tons of merch. I've been up on Amazon's merch page for a long time. So I have several different T-shirts up on merch, and you can go over to Amazon.com/shop/Geekazine. That's my influencer page, and then inside there you'll see a merch page. But let me show you. Like this is there we go.
I like your little Deadpool doll back there.
Thank you. That's 3D printed, by the way.
Neat.
But anyway. I made I make these cool t-shirts. This is my Geek AI t-shirt. So of course I started by making them on the AI, and then I, added my own little frills and everything to make them mine. So I have a few different t-shirts with that logo on there. And then I have this one called "I Like Geek Butts and I Cannot Lie." Um, Jesus saved me one floppy at a time. This is an old 80s
Ooh.
reference. So, and then Guardian of the Geekery, and some other shirts. I have a new one called "Before You Geek Out Coffee," which just dropped on Amazon and Teespring. So, and then you can find that all over at geekazine.com.
How do they go to geekazine.com? Okay, cool. I was going to say. Now, here's another, and this is a tough one. How many people bought something over the past month and then found it on Black Friday at a substantial discount? I mean, there's got to be a word for that. I'm just pissed off word. It really smokes my tuchus when I buy something. I just bought a new shock mount for my Neumann, and then they ended up selling it for $100 cheaper during Black Friday. Are you just stupid for not waiting, or do we just buy stuff on Black Friday and not the rest of the year? Just everything comes to a screeching halt.
A lot of businesses have 30-day price protection, so you should probably check that as well, Mitch.
All right, my friends at Sweetwater are going to get a phone call from me. I want to do something. And has anybody bought anything, let's just say in the last year, that was a total waste of money, that they bought it because they were excited about it? Was that buy one, cry once comment that we have on office hours? Anybody buy anything that they're really sorry they bought? Yeah,
I bought something off an Instagram ad, which I've done before, not too many times, but this one was just a garbage product. I bought this. I have a cat, and I saw this ad for this thing that it's USB-C rechargeable. You fill it with water, and steam comes out, and you basically, it's supposed to when you brush your cat's hair, it's supposed to clump it all together, and then it peels off like super easily. But it did not work at all, at least with my cat's hair. So it didn't cost me very much. I think it was $20, but I just threw it in the garbage. It was just a complete waste.
I used to have a cat, and I used to clean them. The cat seemed to enjoy it. The only problem was getting the hair off my tongue. It just really annoying, and I'd cough up hairballs. So that was the problem with cleaning up the cat.
Do you do that with your corgi?
Unfortunately, the corgi's gone, but believe it or not, I still find corgi fur. Yeah, it's all right. I find corgi fur in the corners of my room. There might be a pile of corgi fur that I missed. Corgi's fur just sheds like crazy. So I think another one this spring, another corgi. I'll go for it again. But yeah, he was version 2.0, and I'm working on 3.0. And the question is, a older person, if you're going to buy a pet, whether or not you get that pet as a puppy and you bring it up. And I decided that I'm going to go to that effort. That requires a commitment, but I'm going to make that commitment because I did that with my last one, Paddywhack. So yeah, it's fun. Don't worry about it, Jeff. It's all cool. That's what we have to deal with when we get our little fur babies. So we talked about stuff that we bought that we really hated. I'm sure there's a few. Oh, somebody's got the Stubborn Rock has been counting the number of times I use sound effects on the show. So we're at 6 now. Let's make it 7, just for the sake of the record here. Go ahead, Alex. I know you want to say
Jeffrey,
something.
did you have a question for the show or for us? It looks like you popped one into Makana there.
Yeah, I wanted to see if I could ask a question.
Yeah, by all means.
That was the question.
That was the question.
Oh,
that was the question.
I get it.
He's just
you
testing
smart ass guest on here. I'll tell you what. What are we going to do about that? It's fun. So, can we still see you doing Geekazine? Is that a weekly thing, or is it that you said you had like a couple of other shows that you go on? Are you a regular on other programs?
Oh yeah, you'll see me every now and then over on office hours, usually on Wednesdays. I'm still there, and whenever I get a chance, because life gets in the way. But I'm gonna just pull it up here. You can go over to geekazine.com and check everything out. I also have the youtube.com/geekazine, where you go there. And I started a brand new channel for the holidays. It's called Holiday Happy Music, which is just that. Right now, there is a 24/7 live channel. You'll log with, this is all AI. So
Wow.
image, basically, so what I did was I created an image. I took the image into one of these AI video creations, and most of them are fireplaces, and they do a great job of making fireplaces look like they're actual fireplaces, roaring and everything like that. And then I use Suno.ai, and I was using Udio.ai, but I'm really happy with Suno.ai for the music, and building a lot of music for the channel, along with some of the YouTube stuff that I can use to really create a holiday channel. So you can turn it on if you don't have a fireplace. You get a fireplace, you get some music, ambiance, cozy music. It's all good. So, and those are the things I've been working on right now. As for shows, I'm going to be on the Angry DJ on. Oh wait, I'm already on. So. But yeah, I'm open for guest spots. My fee is $150, so I'm expecting the check when the show's over. But I'm also working on some other stuff that is going to take me up to Consumer Electronics Show, and
Wow.
that's the
You're going to be there in person
big
this year?
Oh yeah, I've been there for 15 years now. I think it was 2009 was my first
Wow.
one.
Well, I'm glad you're doing original music. We have a sound or a song that we associate with the holidays. So I'd like to play a little bit of it for you now. So here we go. Listen up.
Oh, the weather outside is stinky, and our ratings are so dinky. So as long as the boss don't care, we'll go home and sign off the air.
And that's my pitch for smashing that subscribe button. We need all the help we can get to keep this program going. And just so you know, I'm going to disclaim it by saying that Alex had absolutely nothing to do with creating that piece of music. But we should have artists on playing music. I think that would be neat. Alex, what do you think? I mean, both you guys are musicians.
I'm open. I'm absolutely open to it. I think that makes sense.
Maybe we should have like a Christmas special. We bring all our friends in. No, but they'd have to be solo pieces because you can't have like Megadeth on one channel and folk singing on the other.
What about Jeffrey's band? Because I know he's done live streaming before. What about having Jeffrey's band live on the last Ad Green DJ? What do you think about that, Jeffrey?
My band usually takes off for the winter, so everybody's in their own place. We did back in COVID, we did something online, but normally we're just playing out at different events.
Isn't there a piece of software that you can that synchronizes everybody across wherever they happen to be playing?
Yeah, there's a
Because I remember in
couple.
office hours we had that.
Unfortunately, one of them, Elk Live, just closed down like a month or two ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, what are you going to do? Alex, we have any other interesting questions coming in that we need to answer? I know we're getting some hearts and flowers right now from somebody. I can't tell. Maybe Ernesto.
No, I'm just double checking the YouTube. Usually people are in the YouTube chat because we haven't really transitioned fully to our Q&A system, Mukana, which will happen over the course of the next couple of weeks. But no, we got lots of people in the chat here. I don't see any. I mean, if anyone's in the chat, if you want to ask Jeffrey a question, it's not too late. You can pop one in. Just pop a comment in, and we'll read it and get it answered. But so far, I think we're okay.
And no question is absurd. We live by that. And, we go back to our old radio days and people would call a request line. In my case, it was 764-5300. And they'd call and it would ring right in front of me and I'd pick it up. And a lot of times I'd roll a tape machine on it so that if I got an interesting complaint or a request for me to do something on the air, play a record. And by the way, when you call a radio station to play a request, they're not going to play it. It just happens to be a happy accident that whatever it is that you asked for to be played, like Terry Jackson's Seasons in the Sun, it just happened to be coming up in rotation. But rarely would a radio station play the actual song that you asked for. But I know that for a lot of people, that was quite a thrill to call your local radio station, request a song, and have them say hi to your high school or football team. And then they'd play it, and that was it. And back then, we didn't have social media. I mean, in a sense, radio was your social media, and it's sort of grown up from that. And now radio is playing catch up. And I ask this question to everybody that comes on. Jeffrey, do you think that radio can ever catch up with some of the glory that it had back in the day, like in the 70s and 80s? Do you think it's an obsolete technology or what? How do you feel about it?
Well, you can't really measure it from the 70s and 80s because radio is not radio to what it is today. I mean, radio was old, old waves, and now it's all digital waves, and soon it'll be ATSC 4.0 waves. And eventually we're going to start to see towers disappear. Eventually we'll start to see things rework, but it will not go away. As we talked about before, it's the best way to get information locally. And it's also the best way to not have to pay for, some sort of entertainment.
I think our friend Mark Giuliani, who's we'll call him our expert office radio station owner, talks about that, being hyper-local with his talk stations and information stations. So I agree. I think that's it. I don't think playing the same homogenized mix of music from corporate headquarters in East Jabip plays well for everybody everywhere. What's the point of that? And I think it's going to be a falling out of different radio stations around the country, and they're going to be picked up by local mom pop organizations the way it used to be before there were big multi-mega millionaire, billionaire radio stations that were being owned by different people out there. So it's an interesting thing that we've gone through. I think we have a question coming up, Alex.
Yeah, we have one from Ernesto, and Ernesto in YouTube's asking, what's a good channel to learn more about Stream Decks? I use it for basic things, but I know it can do more. And yes, you're absolutely right, Ernesto. It can do a lot more with third-party apps like BitFocus Companion. And I know Mr. Powers knows something about Stream Decks. What do you think, Jeffrey? What's a good resource? Where do you go?
For Stream Decks, I do not have a list, but there are a lot of YouTubers that do video production that show Stream Deck. It really depends on how you're using your Stream Deck. I'm on a Facebook group that's all about Stream Deck, and they talk about some pretty things from what is Stream Deck all the way up to how do I put it into my $50 million rig. There was a post that showed some like ESPN or something like that, three guys at three different podiums, and the person goes, "Do you see the Stream Deck?" And it was like this blurry little image. You had to really zoom in to see the Stream Deck. It's like, whoa. And it was Stream Deck Plus. It was like, good eye right there. But the whole point is that there's a lot of YouTubers out there that are using it in many different ways.
Right.
I use it in a hybrid mode, and a lot of people don't realize that there is a hybrid mode to Stream Deck, and that is
for Companion and Stream Deck. You could run both, either or. Okay.
And then Joe DeMax, who's running a great holiday special on Central Control, has some great software for that. If you've got an ATEM, you use the Mix Effect Pro. So it's all about all the hardware that you're using. So if I do a Google search to say how to use Stream Deck with, and then whatever you're using it for, because it can very different. It can be different. How do I want to say this? It can be a tool in a different way for whatever you're using. Like, for instance, we're using Mimo Live for this show, right?
Yeah, we are.
Yep.
So Mimo Live has its own set of controls within Stream Deck. If you're using vMix, you can use the vMix controls. You use Wirecast controls. OBS is already built into that. And then of course, Stream Deck was not meant for video production in this way. It was meant for gamers to get their stuff up on Twitch, to make it easier for them to be in this ecosystem of Elgato capture cards and lighting and all that other stuff. And it just, when I got my first one like when it became Stream Deck from the previous the company that actually used it. It just changed the game for me for what I was doing. So it's a very broad question. Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer, but the YouTubeverse is going to be your answer from me.
And Jeffrey,
I would say,
is there anything you can you show your setup a little bit? Because I know your setup's probably as complicated as any of ours, and I know you have PTZ cameras and stuff like that. Is there anything you want to show with your setup? I'm sure people are always curious about this kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can zoom out here and you can see kind of the mess. Let's unlock the focus first, and then I'll just hit the zoom. I mean, I'm using my Stream Deck to do this.
Whoa,
so the new studio This is the new version of the studio, but of course it has a lot of the old pieces. Like this is a Ergotron sit stand desk, and of course we've got the computer here. The one thing about this studio, I'm a big fan of putting things on wheels. That way I can move it out if I need to, if I have like a really big unbox I need to do, then I can get all this stuff out of the way. But in this studio, I wanted to make sure that the computer was not attached to the desk. So I've actually got it on a cart. You kind of see it in the corner there, a gray cart,
Yeah,
Vivor cart, and with only a couple wires coming this way for the keyboard, mouse, and the Stream Deck, of course. But I can move this around however I want to and get the setting from there. And of course, the two main camera setup is basically this shot and of course this shot, which is on the desk
Cool.
right here. This is the OBSBot Talent, by the way, which is a streaming hardware in a box, so I can do a multi-camera setup. This is what I'm going to be taking to CES. So you're actually seeing me on that camera coming through here, through NDI,
Right.
to come here. And then I can actually pump this back into vMix and use this as an on-screen
Oh, wow.
telestrator if I wanted to.
So is that an
So
actual switcher? It's a switcher with a touchscreen?
yeah, it's if you've heard of YOLO box, it's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. So we have two HDMI inputs on there. You can hook up two USB camera type inputs there. There's the new battery from Newer, which is actually rechargeable in itself because you can USB charge from here, or you can USB charge something else from here, which is crazy. Ethernet and Wi-Fi. NDI and SRT you can use from there. And then you can record from here. You can send it out via NDI or SRT if you wanted to, and a whole bunch more. It just blows everything away. And this is OBSBot's, like I said, OBSBot Talent, but they're licensing it from Magewell. And Magewell's version is called the Magewell Director Mini. And they're about comparable price difference. They do exactly the same thing. I think Magewell has a better interface, web interface to this, because you can actually set this off in the distance, call up a web page, and do all your switching from there. And this is what I'm going to take with me to CES for a two to three camera setup for interviews and things like that.
So you
That's
can plug
awesome.
both cameras into that Magewell and do the
Yeah,
live switch while you're walking
yeah.
around. That's the thing. That's pretty cool.
Including
Oh, that's
there it is right here. Hold on. This guy right here, I have it in a box because of how small it is. This is the Meet 2K. This is also an OBSBot camera. So this is going to be the main camera of the CES interviews, and it's
Oh, I've
that
seen
small.
that. That guy's like $150 or less.
Yeah, yeah. It's a USB camera technically. So, but it's 4K, and then it's also got AI control to it. So if I set this to 1080p, 1080p stream, then if I start moving around, it'll do a digital
Right.
PT Z and move around with me. But
So pan
as
and scan 4K to 1080 was
yeah,
what you're saying it does. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
and you can set it. You basically
And
can
Jeffrey,
call it up
is
on
that
the
the camera
software.
you is that the camera you recommend for people starting out now if they just want to get on Zoom and have good video quality?
It's one of them. Yeah, I would highly recommend this one. The Logitech Brio is usually the one I recommend to a lot of people. I'm not a big fan of Elgato's Face Cam because you need the software to use it, and that bothers me. Maybe the newer ones don't do that anymore, but the last one I owned, you definitely needed the software to run, and that caused a lot of problems. But works great as an independent camera. I always tell people if you've got a laptop, you want to have something that can detach from the laptop, because especially if you've got a shaky table, you can put this on a tripod, and then people don't see you shake with it, because why do they need to see that?
Would that connect wirelessly or with a
No,
USB connection?
USB
Not
connection.
wireless. How
Yeah.
long how long is reasonable for a USB connection to that? 20 feet?
Shorter the better, but yeah, I think you can't go past 12 feet on a USB cable. Otherwise, you start having problems. Or if you have like something in between that's delivering the power.
Yeah, I've got a wide angle shot here I'm pointing at. I don't like to put my face in it because I I got that double chin thing. But anyhow, it's got a 15-foot HDMI. That's about as long as I can make it without it getting cranky. It's kind of thick. But all HDMI cables are not the same. Like some HDMI cables I bought for my Sony camera, this one, my FX3, some work, some don't, strangely enough, and I can't figure out why. It's like there's something about the way they wire them and make them up, and you spend the money on it. And Alex, you just said you bought a bunch of USB connections.
I did.
You got to be careful what version you get because
you
OWC is
do,
a good source.
And the ones that I test a lot of cables and the brands. There's two brands. One primarily that I use that I has been very good for me is Cable Matters. I've bought a lot of USB cables from Cable Matters, and they've all been absolutely solid. Haven't had a single failure from them, so I'm sticking with that brand. Ugreen is also a new brand I've just popped out, on Amazon a few years ago. And I've tried all sorts of like USB-C to HDMI and Ethernet adapters. They make network cables and all sorts of products, and they've all been pretty good for me. I haven't had anything fail for me. So those two brands are really good. And Jeffrey's right about the USB-C length. I think at the very outer edge is 15 feet, but I've heard a lot of people have problems. And you're right, finding good quality cables. I mean, the USB-C, I don't even want to get into this, but the USB-C spec is a mess. Nobody understands it, and you got to be careful about the ones that you buy to make sure that they, some are charge cables, some do, some do PD charging, some don't, some are, USB 3.1, Gen 1, Gen 2, they all do different speeds of data transmission. It's just an absolute mess, and there's nothing on the cable that actually says that it can do that, and it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, I know this is a dumb a blanket statement to make, but all my OWCs work fine. They're not cheap. You pay $50 for a decent cable, but I think they're like Thunderbolt 4 or 5 rated, and
yeah,
they'll
those are
work
Thunderbolt,
all those USB.
Yeah,
they'll use all those, and some are active, and some are not. Like Apple USB cables have some kind of active circuitry going on inside them. I don't know what it does, but it's some kind of goodness that makes them work. So I don't. Again,
95% of the products that I 95% of the products that I buy that come with a USB cable that's not like something like this or an OWC or something like that, I usually take the cable and go, because a lot of times they're meant for charging only. They're not data cables. And there's a lot of, you got to really understand that these cables now have little chips, like it's like a Pentium computer inside these cables now. And that Pentium computer chip, if you watch some of the security videos out there, that could actually be something that could be connecting up to your Wi-Fi and sending out data. So yeah, I don't trust a lot of the cables that I get simply because I get a lot of products that come from companies that I can't even pronounce the name because they just made up the name so they could get their little trademark on Amazon. And I don't know what type of data that they're sending back and forth through these little products. And of course, I'm testing stuff, and I don't want to trust them 100% until I feel like I can trust them.
Yeah, Alex just mentioned Ugreen. I want to second that emotion. They make the little 3.5 millimeter connectors, tip ring sleeve, that work great on your ATEM. If you've ever tried to get balanced audio into an ATEM audio input, like a micro or mini extreme, these are good because the standard 3.5 sometimes are too thick, and you can't put two of them side by side because they bump into each other. So the Ugreen is a good source for that in case you're looking for that. And then my comment on the
Ugreen does a lot more than just cables too. I mean, I interviewed them at NAB. Unfortunately, the videos that I did, the audio messed up, so I didn't end up publishing them. But they have a whole line of NAS. They have a whole line of enterprise stuff that, and they're continually growing, and it's amazing what Ugreen has to offer.
Yeah, there you go. An uncompensated endorsement from a well-known guy, Jeffrey Powers, and me, just some schmuck that's happened to get the right cable and plugged it in, and it worked. That was the good news. And by the way, I'm using the Stream Deck along with my Farrago soundboard so that I can do all these great sounds. very easily. The cool thing about the Stream Deck, again, Jeffrey is correct to point out a hybrid system, because Companion is sort of the glue that holds certain things together. Like if you have an ATEM and a Stream Deck and you want to use Mix Effect, you need to use the Companion plugin to make that work. But the cool thing about the Stream Deck Farrago plugin is it's asynchronous, so that when you design a button, I can't show it to you because I'm not sophisticated enough to have a mobile camera. It actually is interactive, so that when I press that turkey sound, I get a waveform and it shows the cursor moving across it, and it shows the turkey there, so that I get a chance to see that. And if I play too much, it makes me sleepy and I have to take a nap. What are you going to do? So do we have any questions, last minute or otherwise? I noticed our good friend John Preto checked in, and he said, boy, I wish I was on the program. John, you're welcome to come on anytime. Even if it's audio only, we'd love to have you on anytime. A lot of our office hours guys and gals are part of this crew that makes this program so good. So I guess that'll wrap things up, unless anybody has any special things that they want to talk about. Once again, Jeffrey, how do folks get in touch with you or watch what you do on the internet?
On the internet? Oh, yeah. Oh,
that thing.
What's the internet? Oh, that thing. Okay.
That thing. The internet.
Yeah. There you go. That's what you do.
Ernesto, you keeping track?
Geekazine.com. Geekazine, I always say Geekazine, think magazine, put in a geek, and you got me. And not Geekazine, but Geekazine. Yeah, that's, you search, you'll find me. And
all right.
YouTube.com, Geekazine, Twitter.com, Geekazine, Facebook.com, Geekazine, Geekazine.com, Geekazine, Geekazine.com, Geekazine.com, Geekazine, all those places.
Wow, thank you for that. And Alex, how do people get in touch with us if they want to?
Thanks. They can do that, Mitch, by going to thelastangrydj.com/contact. That's our web form. You can send us an email. Of course, you can reach out to us on Discord as well. I'm going to leave the QR code that you should see on your screen there. And you can ask questions anytime by jumping into our fantastic community. And I think almost everybody here that's in the chat is in our or part of our community. And we should make sure, hopefully, Jeffrey joins us in our Discord server. So that's probably the best way. And of course, you can reach out to us on social media at The Last Angry DJ across all the platforms on the internet.
And I want to thank Alex for being our producer and TD and question asker and so many other things. You can see him on Wednesdays as the reader, I guess, and host of the audio edition of Office Hours. Is that still going strong for you?
That is indeed. Absolutely.
All right, so check it out. Office Hours is a great place. We talk about it a lot. Most of the people watching are from Office Hours, so they understand what's going on. It's the reason that we look and sound as good as we do. If you want to blame anybody, blame Alex Lindsay for being a great inspiration to all of what we do. I want to thank Jeffrey Powers for being our guest today. Excellent insight into the tech behind all of these things that we talk about on a regular basis. And I'm very curious about this world we live in right now of social media that's changing. I think we're in a flex state right now. As you were saying, it goes up and down, Jeffrey. I think we're in one of those potential lulls where it reinvents itself. Maybe it's going to reinvent it and evolve into something else that's going to be more interesting, more financially viable. We'll see what happens. Once again, our reminder, smash that like button, smash that subscribe. We'd love to have you telling us what you think about this program. And you can ask your questions, of course, anytime we do a Sunday live show. This was our show number 40, the 1st of December. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you all again next Sunday at 5 Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. Take care.